This is Australia. You know, those guys, Aussie, 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 oi, oi, oi. You know, those guys, the Australians. Anyway, it's full of things that can kill you. I have indeed been to Australia. I have lived there for a period of time, all over that giant red rock. And what I found out is that if it lives in Australia and it breathes air, if it bites you, you'll probably die. I mean it. Everything there can kill you. I'm not talking about Australians. I'm talking about everything else. I don't care, man. All its wildlife. Anything that comes out of that ocean. They got fish that can kill you, bro. Their lizards will kill you, man. They have bugs. Their ants will kill you, man. I mean, if it's there and it breathes air, if it bites you, you will probably fucking die. That is a really good chance of happening. Everything there can kill you. And the Aussies, they love it. They just love their country. They love it. And they can have it. They can. I'm a Kiwi. I'm from this country, Aotearoa. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's beautiful. Here's the thing. In Aotearoa, all of our insects, all of our forests, our oceans, from our mountains to wildlife, everything native and everything brought in, there is nothing in my country that will kill you. Everything in my country can bite you and it scratches or tickles a bit. Yeah, it's more of an irritant than anything else. We do have a couple of wild horses that have a bit of a nasty bite, but otherwise, nothing will kill you. And we Kiwis, we love it. We love it like that. Now back to the nightmare, back to Australia. Because in Australia, they also have something that what we call the channel, a drunk guy's bloody nightmare. And no, it's not an insect that can bite and kill you, but it does look like an insect. It's a DC. It's a DC. And it comes from Australia, this one. The thing is, it looks like an insect, and that's it here. This is our DC. Its name is... And now I'm going to show you why we at the channel call this guy a drunk guy's bloody nightmare. And now for the backstory. This is a young Aussie guy. His name is Morgan. He, at the time of his nightmare, was 31 years old. He was working and living in a place called Sydney on the North Shore. Now, Morgan was your typical Aussie bloke, you know, a good cat, funny guy who looked after his mates and loved his whānau, you know, just a good old Aussie bloke. So Morgan was working and living his life on the North Shore and had no clue, like no idea at all that something, an insect, let's say, had noticed him living that life as little DC insects do. You see, our little DC used to live and work in the same area as what Morgan did. But our DC, he isn't a good Aussie bloke. He's a DC. And this DC is a fucking nightmare. Now, in 2013, one night in the weekend, I believe it was, Morgan had been out celebrating with friends at some party. And he had left that party and he'd come on his way back home. And before he went home, he popped into a pub. This pub. To have a drink by himself, a nightcap, so to speak. But what Morgan didn't realise is that he wasn't by himself. You see, right across the road from that pub that Morgan's in is a late night cafe, and inside that late night cafe is our DC. And that DC's only got one thing on his mind. And our good bloke Morgan, our Aussie, he has absolutely no idea about how dangerous his night is about to become. For at 1 a.m, a female bartender called last drinks and told Morgan night-night, and Morgan leaves that pub, as all good guys always do, and went home by himself. Well, that's what Morgan thought. You see, this is where we get to see our DC, because there's Morgan on his way home. And take a guess, if it was me, I'd like to take a wild stab in the dark. And I would say it was this DC. So DC follows Morgan home. And then what DC does is he wants to wait a bit. Why? Well, because he's waiting for Morgan to get home, to get into bed, and then to get completely out to it, to be completely zonked before DC can start his nightmare. You see, to start a nightmare, you have to be asleep, in a real deep sleep. So our DC waits a little while, and then what he does is, he doesn't break in, but he lets himself in. And then what he does is he creeps upstairs, creeps into Morgan's room, and inside Morgan's room, he then attacks him and brutally stabs him 28 times and sexually assaults him. And that is what gives DC its name. It is a drunk guy's bloody nightmare. And then what happens? Well, old DC, he gets a bit spooked, so he scuttles off back home and leaves Morgan's flatmate, this young lady, to discover Morgan and his nightmare. And what she does is she calls the cops, and the cops call in the cavalry. And by cavalry I mean this guy. He's another top Aussie bloke, but let's just say that this Aussie bloke really fucking hates insects. So this bloke and his mates, what they do is they go through all of the footage that I just showed you guys, and that's when they get this picture of this DC. And what they do is they release that picture and ask everyone, hey, who's this DC? And our DC, he sees this and goes, oops, and steps forward and goes, hey, I kind of look like that guy. True, DC, you do. So they bring old DC down to the cop shop. And now we're going to listen to our genius here, because this idiot doesn't just have the looks of an insect. This genius has the brains of one as well. And the classic is that this narcissistic little insect deviant is quoted to saying to someone that if he was to be the killer, that he'd never get caught because he'd get away with it because he's smarter than everybody else. So now let us go listen to story number 1 of this genius's J4 plan and getting away with this murder and getting away with being a drunk guy's bloody nightmare.
According to me is 6:41
Look at how this creepy insect never moves.
The 24th day of September 2013. I am Detective Senior Sergeant Mark Jukes from the Homicide Squad.
Freaky, eh?
What I'm doing is conducting an electronically recorded interview between myself and Daniel Jack Kelsall.
Now let's listen to Genius's story about how he just finished up work and it was just a random coincidence.
For the purpose of this interview, can you just state your full name, date of birth, please?
Daniel Jack Kelsall, born on the 5th of February 1993.
The thing is, he doesn't even sound like an Aussie.
I walked into the convenience store where the person who I thought is this guy was trying to get money out of the machine. Very funny.
You see, dipshit says he bumped into Morgan at a dairy. That's what he explains here.
I then had a small conversation. This guy, Morgan?
Yes, Morgan, yes.
Morgan asked me if I wanted to use the money, the ATM.
He asked you, sorry.
He asked me. I replied no and then left.
Called him no shoes.
No, not to his face. No, that's what.
No, sorry, but that's what you said.
The name that I had for the person
Correct.
Was, no shoes.
No shoes. Have you ever seen him before?
No.
Never?
Not to my knowledge.
Sorry?
Not to my knowledge, no. I mean, it's possible that I may have walked like
Sure.
cross paths.
But you don't know him?
No.
Just going to show the camera there, what we're going to show you there, which is camera 7 on their security.
It's about now DC's thinking, oh shit, maybe story 1's not going to cut it.
Do you know who that is?
It's me.
DC's, eh? DC's.
So that's the same bag you've got?
Yeah.
Okay, and you said you own a number of those shirts.
Yeah. And a number of pants.
Do you recall, does this assist us in determining what shoes you were wearing that particular night?
Now watch this. This is gold, because they hit up old DC here about why he was running after Morgan, because on the video you can see he's moving at speed. And listen to this genius's reply.
Why'd you jog?
It's cold. Mum always tells me if you're cold, go for a jog.
I told you, genius. The brains of an aphid. Just fucking genius. Heaps smarter than everyone, eh? And this Aussie cop just wants to smack him.
How far did you jog?
Oh, how far did you jog?
How far is not very far?
Oh, maybe. I don't know. From the lights, a little bit after the lights, to a little bit before the opening to the restaurant, the Oaks restaurant.
Now listen to genius make up some excuses about why he can't remember certain things. It's gold. It's pure gold.
I might be the only person to tell you about my boss for as well, but I'm not very good at remembering things.
Look at this cop. Look at this cop, mate. Honest.
Sorry, you're not very good at remembering things.
Not fine.
Gold.
Where you were over here on Ben Boyd Road, and then you've indicated you've sort of walked back up Military Road, across Watson. If you're cold, I'm just wondering why you would go that way. That doesn't look like the most direct route.
I don't know. I don't. When I get tired, I don't really pay attention to a lot of things. I think it was because I wanted to check in at work, the front of work.
Story one is
Did you have a
screwed.
bag with you?
Yes, this one.
Thank you. And it's that particular bag.
This one.
So that's a, what is it? Phillips Fox with a, was it South Africa?
South African soccer
Is
team.
that the World Cup?
That's, yes, I believe it's the Visa. It's a World Cup leopard.
And do you recall what you would have had in that particular bag?
I would have had a apron.
Yes.
My box of Yu-Gi-Oh trading cards.
Of your what, sorry?
Yu-Gi-Oh trading card game. And that would be it. I might have had a food item, but I'm not too sure.
Now here's where you can really see this genius come to light. Because he believes he's that smart that he can diagnose what he has himself, that he doesn't actually need to go to the doctors. Because listen to the bullshit he spins here about how smart he is in recognising what he's got.
You've indicated that you have autism, is that correct?
Yes.
What do you mean? What sort?
It hasn't been classified because it was caught so late on in life that I've already adjusted to having it. I haven't taken any concrete tests by my psychologist. I have seen a psychologist and I've been diagnosed with this. I don't actually know what specific level on the autism scale it is, but it does impede some functioning in everyday life.
Like what?
I can't tell balance. I can't tell measurement of any kind. So measurement of time, measurement of object, in any type of measurement, I can't instinctively tell easy enough to. So I can't, like a pinch of salt. I can't continue a same pinch of salt. So you ask me to do 2 pinches of salt, they will not be the same. You ask me to guess your measurement, I would not be able to at all. I wouldn't be able to say you're about this height because I just can't tell in any way.
Well, it's awfully lucky that old DC doesn't have that same problem with measurement when it comes to choosing the sizes of his clothes, since nothing looks too baggy or too short. Very lucky, I'd say. So anyways, the cops start hitting him more directly with the questions.
You ever been to his apartment?
That's that block of one of the blocks of apartments in.
Correct. No, never.
That is a guilty look.
No.
Anyways, the cops did actually recover some DNA from Morgan's place, and they hit up old DC about grabbing some of his to compare.
I explained to you that we'd recovered some DNA and fingerprints from the crime scene at his house, this gentleman, and that I asked you, were you prepared to provide a sample of your DNA and your fingerprints?
Yep.
And that you told us that you weren't comfortable.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, old genius here in his J4 plan. He didn't think about the old leaving of the DNA at the scene kind of thing. Anyways, this is about when the interview ends and old DC leaves and goes home. Now, here's the thing. 2 days later, on the 26th of September 2013, DC calls back up the cavalry and says that he wants to meet up with the detective because he's got a couple more things to say. So the old Aussie detective goes, sweet as, DC, see you there. So they meet up in some mall car park, apparently underground. And it's at this car park, at this meeting, that old DC starts telling story number 2. And what DC says is that, oh yeah, I know Morgan. Me and him, you know, we've got something special going, and I did go back to his place that night. I just forgot about it. And then, oh, that's right, I left him and he was absolutely fine. And when I was leaving, I was walking out and some Sheila was walking in. That's a chick, or a sheep if you're Australian. And says, well, it must have been her. Now, here's the thing. Because they didn't record that meeting. And at the end of that meeting, what they did was they arrested our DC because he had lied to them the first time, was hindering an investigation. So now they could take him in. But old DC, he went, oh, well, fuck that. I thought we were mates. I'm not saying anything. And he never did from then on. But it really doesn't matter because this DC is screwed. Because remember, this guy is definitely smarter than this guy. For sure. Now, what they did find through the investigation was that this DC, this little prick, he actually was wearing the same bag that he wore into the station when he came and talked to the cops the first time. And that was the same bag that he was wearing when he brutally murdered Morgan. There was blood and stuff all over it. And our DC, well, he just was that arrogant. He thought they'd never catch me, so there's no point in washing it. Genius. Genius. They also got him on fingerprints, DNA and blood matter. They've got this little insect squashed under a big Aussie boot. So anyways, how does it all end up? So how does it all end up for our DC and the drunk guy's bloody nightmare? Well, DC being DC, because he is one, well, of course, he pled not guilty because, goddamn, he didn't do it. He's too smart to do something like that. So he pled not guilty, and everybody in Australia, including most of the fucking known world, found him guilty. So they put old DC Insect into an Aussie prison for 40 years. And from what I understand, he's really found his calling. And that almost brings us to the end of this episode on this DC and a drunk guy's bloody nightmare. Now, just a couple of things before we go. First one is, I don't believe that Morgan was sexually assaulted by this insect. What I do believe is that this DC Insect definitely tried, but Morgan, being a good old Aussie bloke, fought to the death to try and prevent that from happening. And DC's like this, like most things in life, DC failed. That is what I think. And the second thing what I think is, DC didn't break into Morgan's place. No, that's a bit of the investigation. They have no idea how he did. But what they do believe is that Morgan came home pissed and just forgot to lock the door behind him. And as I say to you, DC subbies, to all of my subscribers and all of those who watch, and maybe they don't, but probably should, I say to all of you, if you ever go out and you're on the piss and you go home and you want to have a good night's sleep and a real deep dream, lock the door. Remember, lock the fucking door. Otherwise, it may not be a sweet dream. Just a drunk guy's bloody nightmare. Now, there is one more thing that is most important to this episode and to the message I give in it. You see, before when I says, geez, he doesn't sound like much like an Australian now, does he? That's true. And you know why? Because this DC doesn't come from Australia. No, No, this fucking insect was just visiting. So where was DC from? My home. This DC comes from New Zealand. Now that doesn't make him a Kiwi, because Kiwis are the people of Aotearoa of New Zealand, but it does mean that he comes from the same rock. He was an introduced species into the Australian civilization, and he was defective, and I wish to fuck we would have caught that before he went over there and hurt the Huxley whānau. But we didn't, and I am forever sorry, Aussies, for that, eh? But that is why this is important. I give to you my fucking word, bro, that in 40 years, when dipshit gets out and when your federal police drive him from the prison to the airport and boot his DC ass out of your country and he comes back home, to my home, us Kiwis will be waiting. We'll be waiting to welcome him home. I give you my word, bro. Now let's just hope that puts a smile on the cavalry's face. Stay safe, everyone. Stay safe, especially my DC subbies.